Queens, welcome back to my channel. I am Kelz and this is Her Rejected Truth, and on this channel we encourage women to discover their God-given identity and purpose through God's word. So in this environment I encourage freedom, inner healing, deliverance, restoration. So I want to say welcome back for those who are subscribers, and also if this is your first time clicking on this channel, I want to say welcome. Obviously by the title you're probably clicking and you're thinking, what on earth, like what do you mean that being kicked out of church pregnant saved your life? But yeah, I wanted to just put a disclaimer. I'm really a big believer that someone's testimony can be so significant for another person, okay? So this title is not necessarily something that I would say I've come onto YouTube and I want to necessarily talk about, but I believe that this is what the Lord desires me to speak on this week. And I am talking to the woman that has been in a similar position where you've either been pregnant in the circumstances that you did not want to be, or you have been pregnant and you were either shunned or excommunicated out of what would you say, your local assembly or your church, or you are currently in that situation, or you are currently a single mum and you feel almost like life has just stopped for you, or it's shut down for you, or there is no progression for you. So these are the women that I'm talking to today, and I really want this video to be a blessing onto you. I have gone through stages. I wouldn't have been able to do this video 4, 5, 6 years ago, and God has had to bring me to a space where I'm able to feel that I can talk about this. There has been much healing that's happened, and I'm a big believer in the need of inner healing, especially of the heart. I'm a big believer that through that situation it's made me stronger, it's made me more insightful, it's actually made me deeper in my relationship with God, and I am going to explain why. I wanted to say, if this is something that you would love to hear further insight into, if the whole subject that I mentioned at the beginning is something that you desire to be a part of and you want to know more about, then do subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get notification on when I post. I generally post on a Sunday evening at 6 p.m. GMT. I live in the UK. For all my international subscribers, I want to say I see you. Thank you. It's amazing just to see the analytics and just see the love and the support. So I know that this video can be potentially triggering for people, and it might be very triggering for you. So I would say I'm a big promoter of self-care. Take time. If you need to pause the video at any point, do so. But I really want to ensure that I do share some resources for psychological intervention and support. I am not a psychologist. I'm a healthcare practitioner, and I believe in ensuring that I share resources that you can tap into if you need it. Say for instance this video really triggers you and reminds you of some of your experiences. Please don't suffer alone. Do access some help and support. So I'm going to get straight into it. My pregnancy story, what happened? And actually some of people are watching this video out of interest and you actually knew me from years ago and you're just literally clicking on this video to see what is she going to say. I've been there once, okay? I'm not coming here to bash. I'm coming here to tell my story, okay? So I want to put a disclaimer to anybody that feels that they want to project or bring their own input or insight or why this or why that. Please take your time. I'm also calling out the church warriors. If you're going to come in my comments with any sort of insight, you really don't know. And often that's the issue, is that we don't know what people are going through. We have no insight into the experiences of people. We see the fruit of what we think is sin, and that's it. It's just shut down for you. But there is no time to get to know actually the person and what the person is experiencing. And I would show you in my story actually how significant that was for me. And I thank God for it, because I have a beautiful daughter who's almost 5 years old, and her name means grace, and she is literally unmerited favor. She is the grace of God bestowed onto me, because through her birth I found myself, and I'll tell you why. Around 2017 I conceived my child. In that period I have shared with you my background in terms of I was born and raised a Catholic. I probably haven't gone into my testimony, but it's coming at some point. I'll share. I've mentioned bits and bobs in other videos, but But at the age of 18, 19, I came into a church that I had been attending for at least 10 years. That was when I came in, an amazing experience, because at that time I had come from a family that I felt I didn't have a family. So I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is the substitute for my earthly family. I'm finding it in this community. I found Christ as well. So what I found was something that I felt that I had found all I needed. So I invested all myself into that church, meaning I began to form an identity in that environment, right? So I made friends. I will sit at the front row crew. That's what they would call it. Hilarious. But I literally, and that was my little space. That was my protected space. We were almost like the friends that I had. We used to call each other sisters in Christ. So we almost like found just a little camaraderie, a little thing. We were also people that had come into the environment, and there were people in church that were like church kids and been there for so long. But we had come into that environment. So it was a situation where I had made friends. I was also doing ministry with people. At some point, I took over something called Women of Prayer. And in that environment, I would say that there was a real investment. I would go Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Wednesday service. And then there's all other bits and bobs, concerts and things like that. So my life was very heavily invested in that environment, okay? What I would say in terms of myself is that although I was in that environment, I struggled with what everybody will potentially struggle with if that is human. I struggled with myself. I struggled with identity. I struggled with low mood. I've got videos on depression. I struggled with pornography. I struggled, okay? But it's really important to understand that I had an extensive abuse history, okay? And now I have insight into what does that look like. So when someone has experienced any sort of abuse and they come into a faith environment or they find some sort of faith, sometimes it becomes almost like a plaster that covers the wound. But if left unaddressed, there can be wounds, like I've mentioned in the video, that are very much unhealed, deep. They become like, there's a particular kind of wound I've mentioned in my videos before called a fistula, where it can be a wound that leads to your colon. Again, I'm healthcare, and it is just deep, mucky, smelly, does not heal. Okay, so there are people that were like me, and you're watching this video. So you've come into an environment, you found Christ, and it's beautiful, right? You found a church, and you invest all your time, and it's amazing. But you've got issues, okay? Issues that are deep rooted and they are not healed, okay? So that was me. I had issues with abuse that I only came into realization that God was trying to heal me from around 2016. Around that time, so much was happening. My dad was very unwell. My dad, I'll probably do another video about the history with my dad. But at that time, my dad had come from Nigeria, and he actually stayed with me. I ain't seen my dad at that time. I have not. Sorry, I'm doing East London. I have not seen my dad by that time for about 5 years. He was staying in Nigeria, 5 to 7 years. It was so complex, but also I was experiencing which is what I know now, post-traumatic stress disorder. So whilst I was in church for the whole 10 years, I had experienced PTSD, which I did not know. But let me tell you, from the spiritual dimension, I was having flashbacks. I was re-experiencing some trauma. But what I would do, which is not healthy, is I don't want to talk about it. I will carry on putting up this pretense of this church girl, where you're doing the most. I'm doing prayer over there. I'm praying for someone at the altar. I'm doing outreach. I'm doing everything. I'm doing the most. I'm doing everything for everyone else. I'm preaching to the people on the street and saying that you need Jesus. But actually, I needed Jesus. I needed Jesus a lot, to the degree that I needed Jesus in a way where the areas that I said to Jesus, you cannot touch, he needed to touch. So it all came to a head when around 2017, I went to a school reunion, and this was for primary schools, and it was so cool because I think we had reconnected. Some of my primary school friends or people had arranged a meet-up. So in that meet-up, I had, you know, having fun with friends. We actually met at the aquarium in London. So there is I think it's London Aquarium, yeah. So we met there, I think at, oh, anyway, I'm trying to give you like the whole breakdown of where we met. But anyway, that is not the point. But we met at the aquarium, or I think it was like an arcade or something. Yes, it was, but I can't remember the name. Anyway, we met there, had some good time, food, drinks, and we were just having a good time. Around after the event, I got home. One of the girls messaged me and said that I put you up on my Snap, and a guy that knew you, and she mentioned his name, and this was actually my boyfriend from when I was 18, 17 years old, before I came to church. And she was like, oh, he saw you on your Snap. He wants to get your number. So, and I was like, I remember where I was. And it's so interesting. I actually remember when she was messaging me, I'm literally in my room where I am now. I'm positioned down. I'm looking at my phone like I'm in disbelief. This was the boyfriend that would say I got away, and it just all abruptly ended. I found Christ, and it was like, But actually we broke up before then, and then I found Christ. I don't want to act like, okay, Jesus came into the story, and which in most cases is there, and everything else shuts down. But no, it wasn't in this instance. It was more of a situation where we had already broken up. But it was really an abrupt ending. So anyway, I say to her, okay. And ladies, how many of you know that okay? That okay altered my whole life. I would say, but for the better. Let's get there. After that situation, I think he messaged me. He sent me a picture from when we were... He sent me a memory picture. And that literally opened the door to say, oh, hey, how did you get... So then it just started. We started talking. To cut a very long story short, and also respect for my child's father, because he is her dad, and I want to ensure I say, you know, support him in his privacy. But we just like kicked it off, went back to memory, but also it was almost like a situation where it was comfortable. It was something I knew. We had known each other before. He knew the complexity of my family. He knew my story, and it was just familiar, okay? Familiar space, maybe trauma bonding if you want to say, but it was just familiar. And I remember not knowing how I could to share what I was experiencing. I did not know how to share that I was going through so much internally. But when I come into this space with him, it's like all that goes away, okay? So at one point, I will say processes, okay? So ladies, how many of you know that there are stages that we get to where we know we're not supposed to be putting our legs in places? There are places when you're going through so much that you just want to be comforted. You don't want to think, okay? So there were situations that I was in where I was around his house. Not that we were necessarily doing it, but then, you know, there's some familiarity, there's some comfortability. And in my mind, although I was enjoying being in his company, there was this church girl in the back of my mind saying, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're in his house. What if they come and catch you and find you? That was the mentality. It was more like, oh, I'm not allowed to be here. I shouldn't be here. I had that my church mind there. And I'll say church mind. You will know why. And it was more like, this is the lovely secret that I have, where I'm enjoying this time, but I can't actually talk to the people in that environment, because who would I talk to and tell them I'm re-experiencing, I'm having post-traumatic stress, which I didn't know was diagnosed at that time. It wasn't necessarily, but having post-traumatic stress, and then I'm literally going through a process where I am struggling with demonic dreams, or being violated in my dreams, or pornography. And who do you talk to about that? Please tell me. Who do you talk to? So I was in this space where I just literally fell into a season of just doing me. I wasn't really too good in that environment, but I just was doing me. I remember the day, it was the 7th of November 2017, because I knew where I was supposed to be. I had booked annual leave from work, and I remember that day. That was the day I conceived my child. I remember it. I was with him, and things happened. I conceived my child, okay? And I would say even in the way it happened, there was in my head a little inkling that was saying, hey, this may be the situation, this might be the outcome. When I say this, meaning pregnancy, but no, in the other side of my mind, because yeah, we had, and not to TMI, I'm actually struggling to do this video, God help me. As you can see, I'm really struggling. So we had used protection, but in my mind, just something was like, so I remember saying to my friend afterwards, and I was telling her what had happened, and she was like, what's going on? And that friend, she was there to me, and she's a Christian, but she was like, you know, we've been friends since we were in secondary school, since year 7. So I said to her, look, this is what's going on. And she was like, Lechi, like, Kelz. She was like, Kelz, like, what's going on? So I was like, and then she was like, just buy a pregnancy test just in case. Buy a pregnancy test, have that in the house just in case. She was like, what's going on with you? Because she knew me to the degree that I actually had been celibate for 10, as when I finished with him and all that season, I hadn't had any sexual experience with anybody. To now 28 years old, 28, a whole 10 years later, I'm then in a situation where, and this you might relate, because when you're illiterate with that whole realm of things, I would say, I've used the word illiterate, but where you lack knowledge, that's dangerous, because the pregnancy rate goes up. I didn't even know. I was like thinking, okay, maybe by day 5, I was like, okay, there's a morning after pill. I can take that. But am I supposed to be taking that? Is that legal? God, you know, I was going through all this, but it was like day 5 by then. Around the time my friend was getting married and my period was due. My period is clockwork. My period is due at a certain point. And I remember my friend was getting married. Love her still. Should I even say names? But anyway, my friend was getting married. And I remember, because my period is clockwork, I remember maybe on her wedding day, I literally was having a breakdown. And even if she's watching, she can remember this, because I literally was supporting her around her wedding season, and I was not myself. And I think I was coming to the realization of reality of decisions, right? I remember the wedding day. After the service, I had to speak to my pastor. So my pastor called in his wife, we had a discussion, and in the discussion, I divulged the information that I had slept with my child's father. And he was like, oh, wow. Like, okay, what's going on? Let's do a history. And I saying that, you know, I kind of was a bit open about my abuse history. So this is like almost 10 years in. Like, I'm only now kind of sharing the degree of who I am with my pastor. And I feel him like a father. So I'm telling him, you know, his wife is there, and he asked me to write down names of, you know, men who either have been with or have violated me in any sort of way. And I was like, okay, like, I really wanted help. So I'm doing that written down. And then he prayed for me. We parked that day. But still that day, I didn't even make the pictures for the bride. Literally for the wedding. I'm a bridesmaid, by the way. Sorry if I didn't say. I was a bridesmaid. And because my friend was so attentive, she knew something was not right. And she kind of knew the situation already, because I had told her. So she was so, you know, she did not hold it to me. I came to the pictures late, and after I had spoke to my pastor and his wife, and I said to him in that meeting, he said, is there any way you can be pregnant? And I was like, there's no way. There's no way, Jose. In this, my mind, there was no way that I could be pregnant. But in the back of my mind, I wasn't even 100%. I can't even lie to you. So anyway, I think it gets to the point where after the wedding, a month later, correction. I had just come on my period around her wedding, the day before her wedding. Yeah, sorry. Look at me. So I had divulged Okay, so because now I remember the dates of the wedding, it was 22nd of October, 23rd of October. We had slept together, but then also we had on the 7th November, okay, and that's actually when I conceived. So at that point, I said to my pastor that there's no way that could happen. But then I conceived on the 2nd of November, and then I literally, after that, so my period should come around the 22nd of November, 23rd of November. So I'm trying to give you dates so you can get it, all right? So it's all, okay. So then my period comes to that point, end of November, my period doesn't come. Okay. I remember this like a tea. So I don't think I even had a Flow app. So I downloaded an app just to tell myself that you're wrong. The app says you're a day late. Okay, day late. So I remember, bearing in mind, my friend that I told, and she was saying to me, what's going on? Told me to buy a pregnancy test, okay? So I remember I went to work. I was working in London. I lived just on the outskirts of London. I was working in London, come to work, almost trying to forget what I was going through, okay? Hey, Sarai.
You left your phone in Grandma's room.
Okay, let me grab it. And then you go to Grandma and Mama. Mummy's just finishing her video.
Okay.
Love you.
Tea.
Oh, so around that time, I think I remember, so I came back home from work and I took out the pregnancy test, and I think I do whatever you have to do with a pregnancy test. In between that period, because I was so up and down, I hadn't spoken to my child's father for, I would say, I think I did the most and ghosted. Again, trauma. Church girl, you are the reason that I'm doing all this chakra. Blaming, yeah? So I'm like, I don't want to talk to you right now. We'll divulge into that. But then I literally did the pregnancy test. I went down. My mum had cooked jollof rice. And I went downstairs, and I remember, dishing the jollof rice. I almost forgot about, this is how my brain was working. I forgot that you've just taken a pregnancy test. Get the jollof rice, come upstairs into this room. Then I see the pregnancy test, put the jollof rice down and chicken, pick up the pregnancy test. As I'm looking at the pregnancy test, it's given 2 lines. I said, okay. When I say I automatically went off my food. Jollof rice. I went off my food. I literally did drama, I'm doing Nigerian lingo. Drama. I fell to the floor. And I didn't weep. I didn't wail. I just sat on the floor in silence. And I remember my life flashed before my eyes. I said, it's over for you. I'm laughing now because I can laugh now and I can think about it. I could even talk about this, literally. Anyway, so I think I didn't sleep that night. I had work the next morning. I had to travel into London. And I remember saying, okay, in that time I'm working, I had to do a clinic in the GP surgery. So I was like, okay. They have HCG pregnancy tests. These are the ones, the little strips. Some of you know, you go to the general practice, or what would you call it in your area, healthcare provider, private clinic. And there's some strips, they're HCG and they're strong. They're the legit ones. So I said, okay, I'm going to take that one because that's going to tell me exactly, okay? It's going to tell me exactly what the do is, what is the deal. Take the thing. I went into the storeroom, took one, went to the toilet. My dear, I wouldn't say, before even the things, my urine has touched the stick, it's changed. It's given 2 lines. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. I was in shock. I was in shock. I was in absolute shock. So anyway, now I've identified. I kept that a secret. I would say that I did not speak to anybody about it until and the reason I know this, until like the 1st of December. So it's a good week, okay? Let me explain. I know the dates because I know what was there. So what I was now dealing with was the fact that I was pregnant. I hadn't been speaking to my child's father. He was actually trying to get a hold of me. And I remember one evening he texted me from someone else's phone and he said something in a text. And I texted him back this dramatic. You've not just left me, you've left me pregnant. Trauma. So he drives down like 12 o'clock. He's outside my house. We speak. And then it's like, okay, what do you want to do? I'm like weighing up pros and cons. I can't keep this child. That's literally my mindset, right? And, Father. I then decide that when I think about it, let me tell you what was going through my mind. Shame, number one. Number two was that I wasn't married. Number three, that we're likely not to get married. We've literally just started speaking under a month. Number four, what is the church going to say? What are people going to say? Those were the main thoughts in my mind. I can't keep this baby. So I had just communicated. I remember looking at some abortion clinics. I set the date. I knew the date because it was, and my brother doesn't know this, it was his birthday. So I set the date for the 4th of December. In between that, I was still going to work, and I remember one day I had a one-to-one with my manager, Miss Ely. If you like, honestly, I bless God for her. And she had me in her office, and we were doing the one-to-one, and I remember just saying to her, I wasn't myself in the one-to-one, but I just remember thinking about the situation because I had booked the termination. I had been clear in my mind this is what's going to happen. However, I realised that there was so much going on. So I was explaining to her the dynamics. I was explaining to her, I'm not married to him. I'm in church. What are people going to say? And she literally gave me the space to let out everything. Remember, I haven't spoken to anyone, barring my child's father, about telling him. But my feelings, I hadn't actually spoken to anyone. So she's given me that space. I'm talking, and I said, what am I going to do? I haven't read the material that they sent me regarding the termination. So she reads it for me. She reads the email. And as she's reading it for me, in my mind, I literally thinking, I had just crossed my mind up to think that this is just a cell, right? I was about 4 weeks plus. And I said to myself, like, I actually set my mind up in a way that's saying that this is actually not a baby. This is a cell, okay? So, but as she's reading the material, I don't know if it's the Holy Spirit, but the revelation that, is this what is going to happen to my baby? So I'm literally having a revelation that the process seems so gruesome. But then I'm also battling in my mind to say, no, this is a cell. This isn't a baby. So I remember she said to me something so powerful. She was like, Kelz, if you are making this decision on the basis of what people say, you are going to regret it. But if it's your decision, then who am I? She then gave me an example of her story where she said, I'm a divorcee. And she said, if I had said to my life, a younger self, that I'll ever be divorced, I would say to you, get out of here. But she said, life happens. And sometimes things are out of your control. And sometimes things are the determinant of change in your life. And I think Miss Ely didn't even know, Mrs. Ely, sorry, with all due respect to her, she didn't even know that those words were the change for my decision and my life. She said to me, tell 2 people, please. If you've not spoken to anyone, tell your mum and tell a friend. She gave me my phone. I called my friend in that space, a friend that knew. And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, she almost fell over. She was at work as well. We were both working. And she was like, okay, go home. I went home, and I remember, and I don't want this video to be so long, but I went home, and I remember that when I went home, my mum was lying on the couch, and as she was lying on the couch, I literally was speaking. I was in my head working out, how am I going to tell her? So as she was lying on the couch, I remember just like rocking, and I was like, Mum, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. I was just acting like a whole, like, I was like, Mum, I'm pregnant. And then I just whipped up this courage and literally just blasted it out. And I was like, Mum, I'm pregnant. And she was like, and listen, if you know my mum, when she's lying on the couch, she rolls to get off the couch. She shot up like, I've never seen you. If you want to say Usain Bolt, she shot up so quick. And she looked at me. She's like, who's the father? Like, she was so confused. And I was like, I explained who he was. I said to her that the guy that I knew from when I was 18. She said, hey. We're Nigerian, okay? So the expression was typical Igbo expression. She had her hand on her head. She was like, you've killed me. She was speaking to me in Igbo. She said, my child has killed me. She was speaking up, say, okay, I'm not going to do the whole expression, but she was doing a lot. So she's like, he's 18. I was like, huh? Then she was still like shouting. She said, this girl's killed me. Then I realized that she was thinking that he was 18 years old. And remember, I'm a whole 10 years older than this age, right? So I was like, no. The guy that I knew when I was 18. And I don't think she really knew who he was. So, so then when I said that, she was like, oh, okay, we'll manage, like, it's cool. But then I was like, no, it's not cool. Like, I told her I booked a termination for Monday. And this was Friday night. So, no, this is Friday evening. She was like, over my, you know, the rest. She's like, I am not having anyone this is my grandchild. Like, this is my grandchild. So she was like, this is my grandchild. We are going to make it work. And from that, I just knew that whatever's going to happen, I said to God, like, you're going to have to take this. You're going to have to do this with me. Because I knew I'm going to need every ounce of him to get through this pregnancy. Genuinely. So, woo, thank you, Holy Spirit. All right, so I'm going to do a part 2. So after that, that weekend, I cancelled the termination. I cancelled it for the Monday. Remember that the process was in my mind is like, I'm going to go a day by day. I knew my life was going to change. I just knew my life was going to change. And obviously, yes, you would say having a baby, your life is going to, but it was more the realization that the impact that this was going to have, that it was going to change to the extent that I can't even fathom. But I was processing it in a way that I have to take every step as it comes. I told my mum, we just went with the flow. I carried on going to work. I was literally using work as a distraction. I by then had told the child's father that my decision had changed. He necessarily, you know, we went through some things concerning that, because in his mind, you know, there was things that he, you know, it was a lot for both of us, okay? So I knew the outcome that was going to happen concerning church. I've seen this happen to other women whilst I've been in church. So I knew that when you get pregnant, you are put out. That's what we call it, put out, or they, you know, call it. But what it looks like is excommunication. So basically, for the period of the pregnancy, you're not supposed to be in the environment, and you're not supposed to speak to anyone in the environment. So I was then, my mind next was preparing for that. So I remember planning it in my mind. I said, okay, there is a preacher that I really like, and I'm going to enjoy we call it revival. So there was going to be a revival where this preacher was going to come every day for 4 days. So you come every night, 4 nights in a row for the revival. So he's one of my favorites. So I said, okay, let me enjoy the revival. And then by the last day, I will tell my pastor. So that was literally it. I remember the last day because I had prepared it in my mind, I went up to him and I said to him, you know, Pastor, this is the situation. And you remember I said to you, there was no chance. I am. And it was almost like I kicked him in the stomach. He was so distraught. He was like, he was so distraught. So I remember then he said, okay, get someone, come to the office with me. So I grabbed my friend, who I think by then because I told my mum, I think I told maybe her, an additional person maybe. So she was aware, so she came with me to the office, and in that meeting, he just basically kind of expressed how hard this was for him and that he was distraught. He just said, you know, obviously you know the process, you know what I have to do, so today's like your last service, you know, this evening is your last service. And I think it was the afternoon. So I said to him, you know, in my kind of naivety, you know, so I can't come back this evening. He was like, no. So I was like, okay. And he said, you know, it depends what you want to do, if you want to adopt or things like that. And at that time, I think my mind hadn't even processed. My friend was actually more emotional than me. I was quite numb. So when he's talking to me, I think because I was numb about the situation anyway, everything he was saying to me was flying over my head. He was asking me, who do I want to be my allocated person to communicate with? At that point, I said to him, I don't know. And genuinely, I didn't know, because my priority at that point was just to get through this meeting. Then I said, if it's okay, I can communicate with him afterwards, and I'll communicate with you afterwards and let you know. He said, okay, that's fine. So literally, as I'm walking out, nobody around, I'm looking at people saying goodbye, and I'm looking at the environment, knowing that that was likely to be the last time I was going to see this environment for at least a year. It's crazy. So as I'm walking out, my friend is like upset, but I'm just numb. When the journey began, it didn't end there. The journey actually began where I was now, in a sense, not able to speak to anyone. I was pregnant, excommunicated, and I would say to you in that time period that I had to find a leverage. Like, I had to ground myself in what the little I knew. And because a lot of my stability had come from being in a building, being in a community for a period of time, when that is all ripped away, if you do not know who you are going to hit rock bottom. And that is literally what happened to me. But what I'm going to do is, I think I need to do a part 2, maybe a part 3, because I realize even in this, I haven't even touched the surface on what happened post my being excommunicated. Okay, so I would say that this is obviously triggers some feelings for you, even in the understanding of what's happened. Please, in the comments, be nice. I would say, even if you're even if you feel a way about the decision-making process, I understand. But again, I've come to a period where I'm not necessarily in agreement, but I'm going to explain to you what that looked like in my pregnancy, how I grounded myself, how I got through that period, and yeah, we'll see how the journey goes. But let's go with the flow. I want to thank you for watching this video. I thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. So in the next video, I will go into a bit more around what happened as soon as I was excommunicated with me in a different kind of way. I want to encourage you to like this video, and I want to encourage you, if you can relate to anything that I've shared, please let me know in the comments. It's always lovely to hear experiences. Likewise, I will remind you, if you are triggered by any of the information, please do seek some support. I will put some links in the description box. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.